She was 8 months pregnant, sitting in a courtroom, signing divorce papers while her husband watched with a smirk on his face. "Sign it, sweetheart," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "We both know you've got nothing left." He thought he had won. He thought 6 years of manipulation, lies, and stolen money had paid off. He thought her dying father had left her nothing but grief. He was wrong, because what Preston Caldwell didn't know was that his father-in-law had spent 18 months investigating him, documenting every crime, every betrayal, every woman he had destroyed before Eleanor. And Harold Brennan had left instructions, very specific instructions, to be opened by the judge. In court, the moment divorce papers were filed. What happened next would expose Preston's fake identity, his secret mistress, his hidden gambling debts, the drugs he used to control his wife, and the forged documents that would send him to prison. But this story isn't about revenge. It's about a woman who forgot her own strength, a father who protected his daughter even from beyond the grave, and a newborn baby girl who would never know the monster her mother escaped. This is the story of Eleanor Brennan, and it will change the way you think about love, betrayal, and the quiet power of a father's love. Lesson and value statement: what you will learn from this story. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones we trusted completely. But here is the truth this story reveals. You are not stupid for believing someone who was trained to deceive you. You are not weak for staying in a situation that was designed to trap you. And you are never too broken to rebuild. Eleanor's journey teaches us that real strength isn't about never falling. It's about finding the courage to stand up again, even when the person who pushed you down was the one who promised to catch you. The meaning behind this story. This is a story about reclaiming your worth, about recognizing that the voice telling you that you're not enough is often the voice of someone who benefits from keeping you small, and about understanding that the people who truly love you will give you tools to save yourself rather than chains to keep you dependent. Sign it, sweetheart. We both know you've got nothing left. Preston's voice echoed through the marble courthouse hallway, cold, confident, cruel. Eleanor Brennan sat at the defendant's table, her swollen belly pressing against the wooden edge, 8 months pregnant, exhausted, alone. The pen trembled in her fingers. She could feel everyone watching, the attorneys, the clerk, the handful of spectators in the gallery. Her mother, Rosemary, gripped the wooden bench so hard her knuckles had gone white. Diana, her best friend, sat beside her mother with murder in her eyes. Preston adjusted his tie. He caught his reflection in his phone screen and smiled at what he saw. The pen scratched against paper, scratched, stopped, scratched again. Eleanor's hand wouldn't cooperate. 6 years of marriage, 6 years of trying to be enough, 6 years of shrinking herself smaller and smaller until she barely recognized the woman she used to be. And now this, signing away the last pieces of her dignity while her husband watched with that smirk she had grown to despise. Preston leaned toward his attorney. He stage whispered loudly enough for the entire gallery to hear. She thought marrying up meant she'd stay up. Guess Daddy's money couldn't buy her a personality. Scattered laughter from somewhere behind her. Eleanor's cheeks burned. Her mother made a sound, half gasp, half growl. Diana half rose from her seat before the bailiff's warning. Look stopped her. Eleanor counted backward from 10, 9, 8, 7. She had done this before. In the car, after one of his dinner parties, where he spent the evening telling everyone how helpless she was. In the bathroom, while he entertained his colleagues downstairs. In the closet of her own bedroom, while she listened to him on the phone with someone whose voice she didn't recognize. Counting, always counting, as if numbers could protect her from the truth. 6, 5, 4, the baby kicked. hard, right against her ribs. Eleanor placed her free hand on her stomach. Her daughter, the one good thing to come from this disaster of a marriage. The daughter Preston had called a complication, a mistake, an inconvenience. Can we speed this along? Preston checked his watch, a Rolex, a gift from her father on their wedding day. Some of us have lives to get back to. Eleanor's attorney, a young woman named Jennifer, who had been assigned through legal aid, placed a gentle hand on her arm. Take your time, Mrs. Caldwell. There's no rush. But there was a rush. Eleanor could see it in Preston's eyes. He wanted this done. He wanted his freedom. He wanted to walk away with half of everything she stood to inherit from her father's estate. Her father. Harold James Brennan had died 6 weeks ago. Cancer, the kind that moves fast and takes everything. She had held his hand in the hospital room while Preston complained about missing a golf game. The grief hit her fresh, sharp, like a knife between the ribs. Her father had never liked Preston. He had never said it outright, but Eleanor knew. She saw it in the way his smile never quite reached his eyes when Preston walked into a room. She felt it in the extra long hugs he gave her every time she visited, as if he was trying to hold on to her, as if he knew something she didn't. The courtroom door opened. Judge Patricia Holloway entered from her chambers. Gray hair, pulled back in a severe bun. Reading glasses perched on her nose. 22 years on the family court bench had carved permanent lines of skepticism into her face. Everyone rose. Eleanor struggled to her feet, the baby pressed down on her bladder. Her back ached. Her ankles had swollen so much she could barely fit into her only pair of dress shoes. She had bought a new dress for today, navy blue, modest, professional. She had wanted to look dignified, strong. She felt neither. Judge Holloway took her seat. The courtroom followed. Eleanor noticed something on the judge's desk. A sealed envelope. Large, official-looking, the state seal embossed in gold. Her father's attorney, Mitchell Carver, was sitting in the front row of the gallery. That was wrong. Mitchell wasn't supposed to be here today. This was a divorce proceeding, not a probate matter. Mitchell only came when there was something important, something unexpected. Preston noticed, too. His smirk faltered. Just for a second. Just long enough for Eleanor to see the flash of uncertainty in his eyes. Then the mask was back. The confident smile. The easy charm that had fooled her for so long. But before we finalize these proceedings, Judge Holloway began, her voice carrying the weight of authority, there's a matter regarding the estate of Harold James Brennan that requires the court's attention. Preston's attorney, a slick man named Bradley Thornton, immediately rose. Your Honor, with all due respect, this is a divorce hearing. Estate matters should be handled separately through probate court. Judge Holloway removed her glasses. She cleaned them slowly with a cloth from her pocket. The silence stretched. Sit down, Mr. Thornton. Her voice was ice. I've reviewed the documentation submitted by Mr. Carver. Given the potential relevance to the asset division in this divorce, I've determined that this matter falls within my jurisdiction. Bradley Thornton sat. Preston shifted in his seat. For the first time since Eleanor had known him, he looked uncomfortable. Mitchell Carver rose from the gallery. He carried a leather briefcase that Eleanor recognized. It had belonged to her father. The initials HJB were embossed in gold on the corner. Your Honor, Mitchell said, Mr. Brennan left specific instructions regarding his estate, instructions that are directly relevant to these proceedings. He approached the bench and handed over a thick folder of documents. Judge Holloway reviewed them in silence. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes, interest, surprise, and something else Eleanor couldn't quite identify. It seems, Mr. Caldwell, the judge said finally, looking directly at Preston, that your father-in-law had quite a lot to say about you before he died. Eleanor's heart stopped. Preston laughed, but it was forced, hollow. Harold and I had our differences, he said smoothly. He never thought anyone was good enough for his little girl, but I'm sure whatever he left behind is just the ramblings of a sick old man. The judge's eyes narrowed. Mr. Caldwell, I suggest you choose your next words very carefully. She held up the folder. Because what I have here is far from rambling. She opened the envelope. Eleanor watched as the judge pulled out a smaller envelope, sealed with red wax. Her father's personal seal. The one he used only for the most important documents. Her father's handwriting on the front, shaky, written in his final weeks. To be opened in the presence of Eleanor Brennan, Caldwell, and Preston James. Caldwell, upon the filing of divorce proceedings, Eleanor's breath caught. He knew. Her father had known this would happen, had prepared for it, had left instructions. Even from beyond the grave, Harold Brennan was trying to protect his daughter. Judge Holloway broke the seal. She read the first page in silence, then the second. Her expression shifted, hardened. When she finally looked up, her eyes went straight to Preston. Mr. Carver, she said, please approach the bench and bring the additional documentation Mr. Brennan referenced. Mitchell lifted his briefcase. Inside was a stack of folders at least 3 inches thick. Preston's composure cracked. What is this? His voice rose. What documentation? This is completely irregular. I object to whatever this is, on principle. Your objection is noted and overruled. Judge Holloway didn't even look at him. Now sit down and be quiet, Mr. Caldwell. Or should I say, Mr. Whitmore? The color drained from Preston's face. Whitmore. Eleanor had never heard that name before. She looked at her husband, at the stranger she had married, at the man who had spent 6 years making her feel small and stupid and worthless. Whitmore. What is she talking about? Eleanor's voice came out barely above a whisper. Preston, what is she talking about? Preston didn't answer. He couldn't seem to find words. For the first time in 6 years, Eleanor saw fear in his eyes. And she understood. Everything she thought she knew about her marriage, about her husband, about herself, it was all a lie. The judge turned to Eleanor. Her voice softened, just slightly. Mrs. Caldwell, your father spent the final months of his life gathering information. He hired private investigators. He consulted with forensic accountants. He built a case against your husband that would make most prosecutors jealous. Eleanor's hands shook. The pen slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. What kind of case? Judge Holloway held up a photograph. Even from across the room, Eleanor could see it was a wedding photo. A much younger Preston and a woman she didn't recognize. Preston James Caldwell is not your husband's real name. The judge's voice was steady, relentless. His birth name is Preston James Whitmore. He was previously married in Nevada, annulled after 6 months, previously engaged in Georgia. The engagement ended when the woman's family discovered he had been accessing her accounts. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Preston shot to his feet. This is slander. This is defamation. I'll sue everyone in this room. Sit down, Mr. Caldwell. The judge's voice cracked like a whip. Or I will have you held in contempt. Preston's attorney grabbed his arm, pulled him back into his seat. Eleanor couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. A pattern. Her father had found a pattern. Preston Caldwell, Preston Whitmore, whatever his name was. He had done this before. Targeted women, married them, taken their money, moved on. And she had been his next victim. She thought about their meeting, the charity gala at her father's company, the way Preston had appeared out of nowhere, charming, attentive, interested in her work, not her family's money, or so she had thought. She thought about their courtship, the small cruelties disguised as jokes, the way he corrected her in front of friends, the way he made her feel stupid for asking questions about their finances. She thought about her wedding day, her father pulling her aside. "You don't have to do this, sweetheart. Not for anyone, not for any reason." She had hugged him, reassured him, walked down the aisle anyway. He knew. God, he knew. And she hadn't listened. The judge was still talking, still reading from the documents, still revealing the depth of her husband's betrayal. But Eleanor had stopped hearing the words. She was drowning, in shock, in shame, in the devastating realization that her entire marriage had been a carefully constructed lie, and she had believed every word. The courtroom faded away. Eleanor was 27 again, standing in the corner of her father's company gala, nursing a glass of champagne she didn't really want. She hated these events, the networking, the small talk, the way everyone looked at her and saw only her father's money. Then he appeared. Preston Caldwell. Tall, dark hair with just a touch of gray at the temples, a smile that made her feel like she was the only person in the room. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," he said. Eleanor laughed despite herself. "Is it that obvious? Only to someone who feels the same way." He extended his hand. "Preston Caldwell. I work in finance. Boring stuff, really." She took his hand. His grip was warm, confident. "Eleanor Brennan." "I know who you are," he smiled again. "But I'm more interested in who you are when you're not at your father's parties." Nobody had ever asked her that before. She told him about her charity work, the after-school program she had started for underprivileged kids, the grant she was writing to, expand it to 3 more schools. He listened, really listened, asked questions that showed he understood, made suggestions that actually helped. By the end of the night, she had given him her phone number. Her father watched from across the room, something in his eyes, caution, concern. She dismissed it. Her father was overprotective. He didn't think anyone was good enough for her. He would come around once he got to know Preston. 3 months later, Preston proposed. The ring was modest by Brennan family standards, a simple solitaire on a platinum band. He apologized for not being able to afford something bigger. She loved it. Loved that he wasn't trying to impress her with money. Loved that he saw her, not her inheritance. Or so she thought. The cruelty started small. A comment about her cooking. "It's fine, sweetheart. Not everyone can be good in the kitchen." A correction at dinner with friends. What Eleanor means to say is... A suggestion about her wardrobe. "Are you really wearing that? I thought you wanted people to take you seriously." She adjusted, accommodated, made herself smaller to fit into the space he allowed her. The charity work stopped first. Preston thought it took too much of her time, too much of her attention. "You should be focused on our home," he said. "On us. We're building a life together, Eleanor. Everything else can wait." Her friends drifted away next. Diana held on the longest. But even she stopped calling after Preston answered Eleanor's phone 1 too many times. "Diana seems a little unstable," he said. "All that drama, all those opinions. You don't need that kind of negativity in your life." By the 2nd anniversary, Eleanor barely recognized herself. She was isolated, dependent, constantly apologizing for things she hadn't done wrong, and she believed it was her fault. She apologized for talking too loudly at parties, for laughing too long at jokes, for asking questions about their finances, for wanting to see her parents more than once a month. She apologized for existing too much. Preston handled the money, all of it. He insisted it was easier that way. He had a head for numbers. She didn't. Don't worry your pretty head, sweetheart. I've got it handled. She trusted him. Why wouldn't she trust her own husband? The headaches started in year 3. Blinding migraines that came out of nowhere left her bedridden for days at a time. Preston was so attentive during those episodes, bringing her pills, rubbing her temples, keeping the house quiet and dark. Take these, sweetheart. They'll help with the pain. She took them, every time, without question. She didn't know they were sedatives, didn't know he was drugging her, didn't know he was using those foggy, compliant states to get her signature on documents she never would have signed otherwise. Her father found out later, much later, when it was almost too late. The memory shifted, her wedding day, the small chapel her mother had been married in, roses everywhere because they were her grandmother's favorite. Her father knocked on the door of the bridal suite. 5 minutes, sweetheart. Can I come in? Eleanor opened the door. She was already in her dress, white lace, cathedral train, a veil that had been in the family for 3 generations. Harold Brennan looked at his daughter, his only child, the light of his life. His eyes were wet. Daddy, don't you dare cry, Eleanor said, laughing. You'll make me ruin my makeup. He didn't laugh. Eleanor. His voice was strange, heavy. You don't have to do this. Not for anyone. Not for any reason. She stared at him. What are you talking about? I just want you to know that if you've changed your mind, if there's anything you're unsure about, anything at all. He took her hands. I will walk you out of here, right now. No questions asked, no judgment. We can be on a plane to anywhere in the world within the hour. Daddy? She squeezed his hands. I love him. The words hung in the air. Harold Brennan looked at his daughter for a long moment. She saw something in his eyes, fear, sadness, resignation. Then he smiled, the smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Then let's go get you married. He knew. Even then, he knew. And she walked down the aisle anyway. Back in the courtroom, Eleanor felt tears streaming down her face. She hadn't cried during the separation, hadn't cried when she moved back into her childhood home, hadn't even cried at her father's funeral, because Preston had been there, watching, waiting for her to make a scene. But now, surrounded by strangers, learning that her entire marriage had been a lie. Now she cried. Jennifer, her attorney, handed her a tissue. Mrs. Caldwell, do you need a moment? Eleanor shook her head, wiped her eyes, straightened her spine. No. Her voice came out stronger than she expected. I need to hear this. All of it. Judge Holloway nodded. Something that might have been respect flickered in her eyes. Mr. Carver, please continue. Mitchell Carver stood. He held a photograph in his hands. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence this photograph taken at a charity function in Savannah, Georgia. Dated approximately 18 months before Mr. Caldwell met Mrs. Brennan. He handed copies to both legal teams. Eleanor looked at the photo. Preston, looking younger but unmistakably himself, stood with his arm around a woman in a red dress. They were laughing, looking at each other the way newlyweds do. This is Preston Whitmore with Catherine Reynolds, Mitchell continued. Ms. Reynolds is the daughter of a shipping magnate based in Savannah. She and Mr. Whitmore were engaged for 8 months. Preston's attorney stood. Your Honor, previous relationships are hardly relevant to the current proceedings. They are when they establish a pattern, Mitchell replied calmly. The engagement ended when Ms. Reynolds' family discovered that Mr. Whitmore had opened credit lines in her name totaling over $200,000. He disappeared before charges could be filed. Eleanor's stomach turned. That's not all, Mitchell continued. Prior to Ms. Reynolds, there was a Victoria Ashford in Nevada, a brief marriage that was annulled when Ms. Ashford discovered her new husband had transferred the deed to her home into his name. Another photograph, another woman, another life destroyed. Before that, a Stephanie Pierce in Connecticut, an engagement that ended when Mr. Whitmore was caught forging her signature on bank documents. Preston was on his feet. This is harassment. These are lies. These women are clearly coordinating some kind of vendetta against me. Sit down, Mr. Caldwell. Judge Holloway's voice could have frozen fire. These women don't know each other, she continued. They live in different states. They have no connection to each other or to your wife's family. The only thing they have in common is you. She held up another document. Your father-in-law was thorough, Mr. Caldwell. Very thorough. He found 7 women in 4 states who have similar stories. 7 women you targeted, manipulated, and robbed. 7 women who were too ashamed or too afraid to press charges. 7. Eleanor thought she might be sick. 7 women, 7 lives. And she was number 8. She looked at Preston, at the man she had married, the man she had loved, the man who had made her feel worthless and stupid and lucky to have him. He was a predator, and she had been his prey. Your Honor, Mitchell said, there's more. Mr. Brennan's investigation revealed that Mr. Caldwell's targeting of Eleanor was not accidental. Evidence suggests he researched the Brennan family for months before engineering their first meeting at the company gala. Researched. Engineered. Their meeting hadn't been chance. It had been calculated, planned, executed with the precision of a military operation. Every smile, every compliment, every moment she thought he saw her for who she really was. All of it was strategy. Preston tried to speak. His attorney silenced him with a hand on his arm. There's one more thing, Mitchell said. Perhaps the most important thing. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a DVD case. Before he died, Harold Brennan recorded a video testimony. He requested that it be played in court if and when divorce proceedings were initiated. Judge Holloway nodded. I've reviewed the documentation authorizing this request. It's in order. Bailiff, please arrange for the video to be displayed. A screen lowered from the ceiling. The lights dimmed, and Harold Brennan's face appeared. He looked tired, thin. The cancer had already begun its final march through his body, but his eyes were clear, determined, fierce with the protective love of a father who knows he's running out of time. Eleanor, my darling girl. His voice was weaker than she remembered. If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you're finally ready to hear the truth. Eleanor covered her mouth with her hand. The whole truth. About your husband, and about what I did to protect you. The screen flickered. Harold Brennan smiled, sad and loving and determined. Let me tell you about the man you married. The video continued playing in the darkened courtroom. Harold Brennan's face filled the screen, pale, gaunt, but his voice was steady. His eyes burned with purpose. I didn't want to believe it at first. He shifted in his hospital bed. The tubes and monitors were visible at the edges of the frame. When you brought Preston home that first time, I wanted to like him. I wanted to believe my little girl had found her happiness. Eleanor watched her father's image through a blur of tears. But something was wrong. I could feel it. Call it instinct. Call it a father's intuition. Call it whatever you want. Something about that man set my teeth on edge. On screen, Harold picked up a glass of water. His hand trembled as he drank. So I did what any father would do. I started asking questions, quietly, carefully. I didn't want to upset you. Didn't want you to think I was being overprotective. He set the glass down. What I found was worse than anything I could have imagined. The screen changed to show documents, police reports, financial records, photographs of women Eleanor didn't recognize. Preston Caldwell doesn't exist. Harold's voice continued over the images. Or rather, he exists as a fabrication. A character created by Preston James Whitmore, a con artist who has spent the last 15 years targeting wealthy, emotionally vulnerable women. Eleanor's stomach twisted, emotionally vulnerable. She thought about who she had been when they met, still grieving her college boyfriend Thomas, who had died in a car accident 6 months earlier. Sweet, reckless Thomas, who drove too fast and laughed too loud and loved her with his whole heart until a drunk driver took him away. She had sworn she would never love anyone who reminded her of Thomas. She wanted safe, stable, reliable. Preston had seemed like the opposite of Thomas in every way. Now she understood why. "He researched you, sweetheart." Harold's voice cracked with emotion. "I found records on his computer, notes about Thomas, about the accident, about how you processed grief. He made himself into exactly what you needed, and then he made you need him." The screen showed more documents, bank statements, wire transfers, legal filings. Once I understood what he was, I started preparing. I restructured my entire estate. Everything went into an irrevocable trust administered by Mitchell Carver. Nothing in your name directly. Nothing Preston could touch. Eleanor looked at Mitchell. He sat in the gallery with his hands folded, his face carefully neutral. "I know what you're thinking," Harold continued. "Why didn't I just tell you? Why didn't I show you the evidence and let you make your own choice?" The question hung in the air. "I tried, sweetheart. That's the part that kills me. I tried." The scene shifted. Eleanor recognized her father's study, dark wood paneling, the smell of leather and old books. She had spent countless hours there as a child, reading on the couch while her father worked. "3 weeks before your wedding," Harold said, "I confronted Preston in this very room." Eleanor's breath caught. The video cut to another recording. Security footage from her father's study. Date stamped 3 weeks before her wedding. Harold sat behind his desk. Preston stood across from him. The easy smile was gone from Preston's face. His eyes were cold, calculating. "I know what you are." Harold's voice was ice in the recording. Preston laughed. "With all due respect, sir, you don't know anything. I know you've done this before. I know about Catherine in Georgia, Victoria in Nevada, the others." Harold leaned forward. "I know my daughter deserves better than a con artist with a history of fraud." Preston's expression shifted. For just a moment, the mask slipped completely. "And what exactly do you plan to do with this information, Harold?" "I'm giving you one chance." Harold's voice was steady. "Walk away. Tonight. Tell Eleanor whatever you want. Tell her you met someone else. Tell her you're not ready. I don't care. Just disappear from her life and never come back. Or I show her everything, every police report, every bank record, every woman you've destroyed." Preston was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Lower, harder. "You won't do that. Try me." "No." Preston smiled. It was a terrible smile. "You won't do it because you know what it will do to her. She loves me, Harold. Really loves me. And if you take that away from her 3 weeks before her wedding day, you'll break something inside her that will never heal." Harold said nothing. "Besides," Preston continued, "what proof do you really have? Some rumors from bitter ex-girlfriends, some financial records that could be explained a dozen different ways? Eleanor will never believe you. She'll think you're just trying to control her life. She'll believe the evidence. Will she? Or will she think you manufactured it because you can't stand to see her choose anyone but you?" The words hung in the air like poison. "She's not a child anymore, Harold. She makes her own choices. And she's chosen me." Preston straightened his tie. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a wedding to prepare for." He walked out. The recording ended. Harold's face returned to the screen. His eyes were wet. He was right. The words came out hoarse. "I couldn't do it to you. I couldn't be the one to break your heart. So I did the only thing I could think of. I prepared for the day when he would break it himself. Eleanor's whole body shook. Her father had known, had tried to stop it, had been manipulated into silence by the very man he was trying to protect her from. I should have told you anyway. Harold's voice broke. I should have shown you everything and let you decide. That's the decision I'll regret until the day I die. But I couldn't bear to see the look on your face. I couldn't bear to be the one who destroyed your happiness. He wiped his eyes. So instead, I prepared. I restructured the estate. I gathered evidence. I documented everything, and I waited. The screen showed more documents. Financial records showing withdrawals from accounts Eleanor didn't know existed. Forged signatures on legal documents. Communications between Preston and someone named Vanessa. 6 years, sweetheart. 6 years of watching him slowly try to destroy you. Watching you shrink. Watching you apologize for things that weren't your fault. Watching you become a shadow of the brilliant, fierce woman I raised. Eleanor remembered. The apologizing, always apologizing, for speaking too loudly, for laughing too long, for wanting things Preston decided she didn't deserve. She had thought something was wrong with her, that she was too much and not enough, all at the same time. Now she understood. He had been doing it on purpose, breaking her down piece by piece, making her small and controllable and dependent. I wanted to swoop in and save you, Harold continued. Every day I wanted to march into your house and drag you out of there, but your mother reminded me that you're not a child, that you had to find your own way out, that rescuing you would only teach you that you needed rescuing. He smiled, sad and proud and heartbroken all at once. She was right, of course. She usually is. So instead of saving you, I prepared the tools for you to save yourself. The video paused on Harold's face. Judge Holloway spoke into the silence. There's more to this video, Mrs. Caldwell. Your father goes into significant detail about Mr. Caldwell's financial crimes, forged documents, fraudulent transfers, schemes to access your trust fund. Would you like to continue now, or do you need a break? Eleanor looked at Preston. He was gray, sweating. His attorney was whispering furiously in his ear, but Preston didn't seem to hear. For the first time in 6 years, she saw him clearly. Not the charming man she had married, not the cruel stranger he had become. Just a small, desperate person whose lies were finally catching up with him. She turned back to the judge. Continue, she said. I want to hear everything. The video resumed. Now let me tell you about the prenuptial agreement, Harold said. The one you don't remember signing. Harold's face filled the screen again. In the 3rd year of your marriage, he began, Preston convinced you to sign several legal documents. Tax papers, he told you. Estate planning forms. Boring bureaucratic stuff. Eleanor tried to remember. The 3rd year. The headaches. The fog. One of those documents was a post-nuptial agreement. It gave Preston access to your trust fund in the event of certain conditions being met, conditions that would have given him control of everything once I passed away. Eleanor's blood ran cold. You don't remember signing it, sweetheart. I know you don't, because you weren't fully conscious when you did. The screen showed a document, Eleanor's signature at the bottom, but it didn't look quite right. The letters were too loose, too sloppy. The pills Preston gave you for your headaches weren't for headaches. Harold's voice was tight with controlled rage. They were sedatives, strong ones. He drugged you, Eleanor. He drugged you, and then he made you sign documents that would have let him steal everything. Eleanor's hands flew to her stomach. The pills. The ones Preston was so attentive about bringing her. The ones that made the headaches fade, but left her feeling foggy and compliant. She had thought he was taking care of her. He had been poisoning her. I wasn't stupid. The thought came unbidden. I was drugged. My own husband drugged me. She said it out loud. She hadn't meant to, but the words escaped anyway. I wasn't stupid. He drugged me. Diana, in the gallery, made a sound between a sob and a growl. Rosemary clutched her daughter's hand. On screen, Harold continued. I had the documents analyzed by a forensic handwriting expert. The signatures were made under the influence of sedatives. The expert was willing to testify, and I've included her full report in these materials. More documents appeared. Expert analysis, chemical breakdowns, legal opinions. I also had the pills themselves analyzed. Harold's expression hardened. Preston had been giving you a benzodiazepine, a sedative commonly used for anxiety, at doses high enough to impair your judgment and memory. Eleanor thought about all those blank spaces in her memory, the conversations she couldn't quite recall, the days that blurred together. She had blamed herself, thought she was becoming forgetful, thought something was wrong with her mind. There had been something wrong, but it wasn't her mind. It was her husband. The post-nuptial agreement is void, Harold said. My attorneys have documented everything, the forgery, the drugging, the fraud. Preston Caldwell signed his own prison sentence, and he doesn't even know it yet. The video paused again. Judge Holloway looked at Preston. Mr. Caldwell, do you have anything to say about these allegations? Preston's attorney stood quickly. Your Honor, these are unsubstantiated claims from a man who clearly held a grudge against my client. We will need time to review this so-called evidence and prepare a response. You'll have time, the judge said, but not today. Today we're going to hear everything Mr. Brennan had to say. She gestured to the bailiff. Continue the video. Harold's face returned. But the forgery and the drugging aren't the worst part, sweetheart. His eyes glistened. That's not even close to the worst part. Eleanor braced herself. 3 years into your marriage, Preston started seeing someone else. The screen changed to show photographs. Preston with a woman Eleanor vaguely recognized. Dark hair, sharp features, young and confident in a way Eleanor hadn't felt in years. Her name is Vanessa Thorne. She's a paralegal at a firm downtown. Preston met her at a legal conference. More photographs. Preston and Vanessa at restaurants, at hotels, getting into the same car outside an apartment building Eleanor didn't recognize. The affair has been going on for 4 years. 4 years, half their marriage. Eleanor thought about all the business trips, the late nights at the office, the way Preston would shower immediately when he came home. She had thought he was being considerate. Washing off the stress of the day before coming to bed. He had been washing off her. He set her up in an apartment, Harold continued, furnished it with money he siphoned from your household accounts, bought her a car, jewelry, took her on trips to places he told you were business conferences. The screen showed financial records, wire transfers to an account in Vanessa Thorne's name, credit card statements showing purchases at jewelry stores, boutiques, 5-star hotels. He's been living a double life, sweetheart, for 4 years. And the whole time he's been making you feel like you weren't enough, making you feel like the problems in your marriage were your fault. Eleanor stared at the photographs. Vanessa Thorne, young, beautiful, clearly in love with a man who was lying to her too, because that was what Preston did. He lied to everyone about everything. There's one more thing, Harold said. The thing that made me realize I had to leave all of this behind. The thing that convinced me you needed to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. He paused, took a breath. Vanessa is pregnant. The courtroom gasped. Eleanor's hand went to her own swollen belly. She's due 3 weeks after you, sweetheart. Preston has been planning to divorce you, take half of what he thought you'd inherit, and start fresh with her. With your money. With a new family, built on the ashes of the one he destroyed. Pregnant. Vanessa Thorne was pregnant with Preston's child. Eleanor had been carrying her daughter alone, going to prenatal appointments alone, decorating the nursery alone, while Preston claimed business dinners and late meetings and unavoidable conflicts. He had been with her, with Vanessa, building another life while Eleanor struggled to hold together the ruins of hers. "Our baby," she said. The words came out flat. "Dead. The baby you called a complication, a mistake, an inconvenience." She was talking to Preston now, looking directly at him. "You told me to terminate, 3 times. You said we weren't ready, that I wasn't ready. You said I'd be a terrible mother." Preston opened his mouth, closed it. For once in his life, he had nothing to say. "You wanted me to get rid of her so you could have a fresh start with your other family." Eleanor's voice shook with fury. "You called our daughter an inconvenience while you were building a life with someone else." Movement in the back of the courtroom. Eleanor turned. A woman stood near the door, dark hair, sharp features, a visible baby bump under her blazer. Vanessa Thorne. She had been sitting in the gallery the whole time, watching, listening. Now her face was white with shock. "No." Vanessa's voice was barely audible. "No, that's not. He told me. He told me you were abusive, that he was trapped, that he stayed for the baby, but that you made his life miserable." Eleanor laughed. She couldn't help it. The sound came out broken and bitter. "Of course he did." She shook her head, slowly. "Of course that's what he told you." Vanessa took a step forward, then another. Tears were streaming down her face. "I didn't know," she said. "I swear to God, I didn't know about any of this. The other women, the drugs, the forgery. I didn't know." She was looking at Eleanor, pleading. "He told me you married him for his money, that your family hated him because he wasn't rich enough, that you controlled everything and gave him nothing." Eleanor stared at this woman, this other pregnant woman who had been lied to just as thoroughly as she had. The anger she expected didn't come, just exhaustion, and something that might have been pity. "He told me the same things about everyone else in my life," Eleanor said quietly. "That they were toxic, controlling, bad for me. He isolated me from everyone who loved me, and I let him because I believed him." Vanessa's shoulders shook with sobs. The bailiff moved toward her, but Eleanor held up a hand. "Let her stay," she said. "She deserves to hear this too." Judge Holloway nodded. On screen, Harold Brennan continued. "I don't know if you'll ever be able to forgive me, sweetheart, for not telling you sooner, for not finding a way to make you see what he was before it was too late." His voice cracked. "But I want you to know that everything I did out of love. Everything I prepared so you would have the tools to save yourself. Not so I could save you, but so you could save yourself." He smiled through his tears. "Because that's what you do, Eleanor. That's who you are. You're a fighter. You always have been. You just forgot for a little while." The video ended. The courtroom was silent. Eleanor sat in the stillness, her hand on her belly, her father's words echoing in her ears. She was a fighter. She had forgotten, but she was starting to remember. The lights came back up in the courtroom. Eleanor blinked against the brightness. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her back ached from sitting so long. The baby had shifted, pressing against her spine in a way that sent shooting pains down her legs. But she didn't move, didn't ask for a break. She needed to hear everything. "Your Honor," Mitchell Carver said, rising from his seat, "with the court's permission, I'd like to present the full financial documentation Mr. Brennan compiled." Judge Holloway nodded. "Proceed." Mitchell opened his briefcase and withdrew a stack of folders at least 4 inches thick. Mr. Brennan spent 18 months documenting Mr. Caldwell's financial crimes. He began laying folders on the evidence table. What we have here is a comprehensive record of fraud, forgery, and theft spanning the entire 6 years of the Caldwell marriage. Preston's attorney stood. Your Honor, we object to this entire proceeding. This is a divorce hearing, not a criminal trial. My client has not been charged with any crimes. Yet, Judge Holloway said dryly, he hasn't been charged yet, but based on what I've seen so far, that situation may change very quickly. She gestured for Mitchell to continue. Let's start with the household accounts. Mitchell displayed a series of bank statements on the courtroom monitor. Over the past 6 years, Preston Caldwell has withdrawn a total of $43,722 from joint accounts for personal expenditures never disclosed to his wife. Eleanor watched the numbers scroll past. Transfers to accounts she didn't recognize. Cash withdrawals on dates when Preston claimed to be at work. Credit card charges at restaurants and hotels she had never visited. These funds were used to maintain Mr. Caldwell's parallel life with Mrs. Thorne, Mitchell continued. Rent on her apartment, car payments, jewelry, travel. He clicked to the next set of documents. In addition to the household funds, Mr. Caldwell also accumulated significant personal debts that he concealed from his wife. The screen showed statements from 3 different banks. Credit lines opened in Preston's name alone. Balances in the tens of thousands. Gambling debts, Mitchell said. Mr. Caldwell has a significant gambling problem. He owes money to several establishments, as well as to private individuals whose business practices fall outside the boundaries of legitimate lending. Gambling. Eleanor remembered the late nights when Preston would come home smelling like whiskey and cigarette smoke. He always had an excuse, a work function, a client, dinner, networking, lies, all of it. Total known debt exceeds $62,000, Mitchell continued. Debt that Mr. Caldwell apparently intended to pay off using funds from Mrs. Caldwell's inheritance. Preston's mask was crumbling. His face had gone from gray to almost green. Sweat beaded on his forehead. This is absurd, he muttered. Completely absurd. Mr. Caldwell, Judge Holloway's voice was sharp. You will have an opportunity to respond, but right now, you will remain silent. She turned back to Mitchell. What about the forgery Mr. Brennan mentioned? Mitchell produced another folder. The post-nuptial agreement was the most significant forgery, but it wasn't the only one. He displayed a series of documents side by side. Over the past 3 years, Mr. Caldwell has forged his wife's signature on multiple financial documents. The screen showed comparison images. Eleanor's real signature next to the ones on Preston's documents. Even to her untrained eye, the differences were obvious. Tax filings that claimed deductions Mrs. Caldwell never authorized. Insurance documents that altered beneficiary designations. Even a power of attorney that Mr. Caldwell apparently planned to use if his wife became incapacitated. The pills, Eleanor said softly. He was going to use the pills to make me incapacitated. Judge Holloway's expression darkened. Is there evidence to support that theory, Mr. Carver? Unfortunately, yes. Mitchell pulled out a slim folder. Mr. Brennan found communications between Mr. Caldwell and an unlicensed pharmaceutical supplier, text messages discussing dosages and effects. Mr. Caldwell was apparently researching ways to keep his wife in a state of diminished capacity for extended periods. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Eleanor felt Diana's hand on her shoulder. She hadn't even noticed her friend leave the gallery and come to sit beside her. I'm going to kill him, Diana whispered. I swear to God, Eleanor, when this is over, I'm going to kill him. Eleanor squeezed her friend's hand, but said nothing. On the stand, Mitchell continued his presentation. Mr. Brennan also documented Mr. Caldwell's interactions with Mrs. Caldwell's medical providers. He displayed a series of emails. Mr. Caldwell apparently contacted Mrs. Caldwell's physicians multiple times, asking questions about medications that could affect memory and compliance. He represented himself as a concerned husband worried about his wife's mental health. Eleanor remembered the appointments, the doctors who seemed to treat her differently after Preston accompanied her, the prescriptions that appeared without her asking for them. He was building a case to have me declared incompetent, she realized. He was going to take everything. That appears to have been the plan, Mitchell confirmed. However, Mr. Brennan's attorneys intervened before Mr. Caldwell could execute it. The estate restructuring made it impossible for Mr. Caldwell to access Mrs. Caldwell's inheritance, regardless of her mental state. Judge Holloway removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. Mr. Carver, in my 22 years on this bench, I have seen a great many cases of marital misconduct. But this... She shook her head. This is extraordinary. Your Honor, there's one more thing. Mitchell reached into his briefcase one final time. Mr. Brennan left a personal letter to be read aloud in court. He specified that it should be delivered in his own words, exactly as written. He handed the letter to the judge. Judge Holloway reviewed it briefly. Her expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, disgust, and finally, something that looked almost like satisfaction. Mr. Caldwell, she said, looking directly at Preston, your father-in-law had some choice words for you. Would you like me to read this, or shall Mr. Carver? Preston's voice cracked. This is harassment. This is cruel and unusual. I'll read it myself. The judge unfolded the letter and cleared her throat. Dear Preston. Her voice was cold and clear. You thought you married money. You married something far more dangerous. You married a father's love. Eleanor closed her eyes. I spent 18 months gathering evidence. Not for the courts, although they'll certainly find it useful. I gathered it for Eleanor. So when she was ready to see the truth, she'd have everything she needed to set herself free. The judge paused. You're a small man, Preston. A petty thief with delusions of grandeur. You've spent your entire life taking from people who trusted you because you have nothing real inside. No talent, no ambition, no love, just an endless hunger for what belongs to others. Preston made a sound, half protest, half sob. My daughter loved you, really loved you, and you used that love like a weapon. You made her doubt herself, made her small, made her invisible, all so you could steal what she would have given you freely if you'd just been honest. The judge's voice hardened. But here's what you didn't count on, Preston. You didn't count on a dying man with nothing left to lose. You didn't count on a father who would spend his final months making sure his daughter would be protected. And you certainly didn't count on Eleanor. Eleanor opened her eyes. Because my daughter is stronger than you ever realized. Stronger than I ever told her. She's going to survive this. She's going to thrive. And you're going to spend the rest of your life knowing that you couldn't break her. The letter continued for another page. Details about the evidence, specifics about the charges that could be filed, instructions for the attorneys about pursuing prosecution. But Eleanor had stopped listening. She was thinking about her father, about the last time she saw him, about the way he held her hand and told her he loved her. He had known he was dying, had known he was leaving her alone to face Preston, and he had spent every moment he had left making sure she would be ready. I love you, sweetheart, the letter concluded. I'm so proud of the woman you've become, and I'm so sorry I won't be there to see the woman you're going to be. But I know, deep in my bones, that you're going to be magnificent. The judge folded the letter. The courtroom was silent. Eleanor wiped her eyes. Thank you, Daddy, she whispered, for everything. The silence stretched. Then Preston exploded. This is a setup. He was on his feet, his his face contorted with rage. This is a coordinated attack. Harold Brennan was a controlling, manipulative old man who couldn't stand that his daughter chose me over him. His attorney tried to pull him back down. Preston shook him off. Every piece of so-called evidence has been fabricated. The photographs, the documents. That video was probably created with AI, for all we know. Mr. Caldwell? Judge Holloway's voice cut through his tirade like a blade. Sit down, now. No. Preston slammed his hand on the table. I will not sit here and be slandered by a dead man. I have rights. I have protections under the law, and I demand that these proceedings be stopped immediately. Mr. Caldwell, you will control yourself, or I will have you removed from this courtroom. Remove me? Preston laughed. It was a wild, unhinged sound. Go ahead. Remove me. At least then I won't have to listen to any more of this garbage. He turned to Eleanor. This is your fault. His voice dripped with venom. All of it. You poisoned your father against me. You fed him lies and suspicions, and he believed every word because he never wanted you to be happy with anyone but him. Eleanor looked at her husband. At this stranger who had shared her bed for 6 years, she felt nothing. Not anger, not fear, not even sadness. Just an overwhelming emptiness where love used to be. Preston, she said quietly. Stop. Don't tell me to stop. He moved toward her. Don't you dare tell me to stop after what you've done. You've ruined me. You and your father and your money. I should have known better than to get involved with your family. The bailiff stepped between them. Sir, you need to step back. Preston ignored him. 6 years, Eleanor. 6 years I put up with your neurotic behavior, your insecurities, your constant need for validation. I made you feel loved when nobody else would have touched you. Diana stood up in the gallery. You son of a... Order. Judge Holloway banged her gavel. Everyone will be silent or everyone will be removed. Diana sat. Barely. Preston was still talking. The words poured out of him like poison. 6 years of carefully maintained facade crumbling into ugly, desperate truth. You think you're so special? You're nothing. You were nothing when I found you, and you're nothing now. A sad, lonely rich girl who couldn't find a man on her own. I did you a favor by marrying you. Eleanor stood. It was difficult. Her belly threw off her balance. Her back screamed in protest, but she stood. And she looked at Preston with eyes that had finally cleared. Are you finished? Her voice was quiet, calm, steady. Preston faltered. I asked if you're finished. She took a step toward him. The bailiff tensed but didn't intervene. Because I've been listening to you tear me down for 6 years, and I think I've heard enough. Preston's mouth opened, closed. You called me neurotic, insecure, needy. Eleanor's voice grew stronger with every word. But the only reason I was any of those things was because you made me that way. You isolated me from everyone who loved me. You controlled every aspect of my life. You drugged me and stole from me and made me believe I was going crazy. She was crying now, but her voice didn't waver. I spent 6 years apologizing, for speaking too loudly, for taking up too much space, for existing in ways you didn't approve of. I made myself smaller and smaller, trying to fit into the box you built for me. She touched her belly, and when I got pregnant, when I finally had something that was mine and couldn't be taken away, you told me to get rid of her. You called our daughter a mistake, a complication, because she didn't fit into your big plans. Eleanor shook her head slowly. But I kept her, even when you threatened me, even when you said you'd leave if I went through with it. I kept her because somewhere, deep down, I knew she was the only real thing in my life. She turned to face the courtroom. My name is Eleanor Brennan, not Caldwell. I was never really a Caldwell. I was just a target, a mark, a source of income for a man who never loved anything but money. Her eyes found Vanessa, still standing at the back of the room. He didn't love you either. He doesn't know how. Men like Preston don't love. They acquire, they consume, and when there's nothing left to take, they move on. Vanessa nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. Eleanor turned back to Preston. I don't hate you. The word surprised even her. I pity you. You've spent your entire life taking from people because you have nothing real inside. No talent, no purpose, no genuine human connection. When this is over, you'll have exactly what you deserve. Nothing. She sat down. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Judge Holloway looked at Preston for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable. Mr. Caldwell, she said finally, do you have anything else to say? Preston opened his mouth, closed it. All the fight had gone out of him. He stood in the middle of the courtroom, shoulders slumped, looking smaller than Eleanor had ever seen him. His voice cracked. I need to speak to my attorney. You'll have plenty of time for that, the judge nodded to the bailiff. Based on the evidence presented today, I'm ordering Mr. Caldwell to be held pending a formal review of potential criminal charges. The documentation provided by Mr. Brennan's estate suggests multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and possibly poisoning. Preston went white. You can't do that. I haven't been convicted of anything. No, but there's sufficient evidence to suggest you're a flight risk. The judge began gathering her papers. You have a documented history of disappearing when your schemes unravel, Mr. Caldwell. I'm not going to give you the opportunity to do it again. Two sheriff's deputies approached Preston. Put your hands behind your back, sir. Preston looked around wildly, at his attorney, who was already packing up his briefcase, at Vanessa, who wouldn't meet his eyes, at Eleanor, who watched him with something that might have been pity. Eleanor. His voice changed, softened, became the charming man she had married. Eleanor, please. We can work this out. Think about the baby, our baby. Don't do this to our family. Our baby. The same baby he had told her to terminate 3 times. The baby he had called a complication, a mistake, an inconvenience. Our baby, Eleanor repeated. You mean the baby you wanted me to abort so you could start fresh with Vanessa? Preston flinched. The baby you never came to a single appointment for? The baby whose nursery I decorated alone because you always had somewhere more important to be? She stood again, walked slowly toward him. Her name is going to be Charlotte, after my grandmother. She's going to grow up knowing she was wanted, loved, protected by me, by my mother, by everyone who actually cares about her. She stopped just inches from him, but not by you. You don't get to know her, Preston. You don't get to pretend to be a father to a child you never wanted. And you certainly don't get to use her as leverage to wiggle out of the consequences of everything you've done. The deputies took Preston's arms. Eleanor. His voice cracked with desperation. Eleanor, I'm sorry. I made mistakes. But I can change. We can start over. Please. Eleanor looked at him. Really looked at him. She saw the charm that had captivated her 6 years ago. The smile, the easy confidence, the way he made everything seem possible. And underneath it all, she saw nothing. Just emptiness wearing a human mask. Goodbye, Preston. She turned away. The deputies let him out. The courtroom door closed behind him with a sound like a coffin lid. Eleanor stood alone in the middle of the room, surrounded by documents and photographs, and the wreckage of her marriage. And she felt something she hadn't felt in 6 years. Free. 3 days later, Eleanor sat in the bathtub of her childhood home, fully clothed, water running, steam rising around her like a cocoon. The house was quiet. Her mother had gone to bed hours ago. The clock on the bathroom wall said 2:47 in the morning. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the courtroom. Preston's face as they led him away. The stack of documents that proved her entire marriage was a lie. She had thought she would feel relieved, vindicated, free. Instead, she felt hollow. The bathtub was a stupid place to be. Pregnant women weren't supposed to take hot baths. Something about body temperature and the baby, she had read it in one of the books Preston had thrown away because he said they were making her neurotic. She wasn't in the bath, though, just sitting in it, letting the steam wrap around her while the water ran down the drain. It was something her mother used to do when Eleanor was little. When the world got too heavy, Rosemary would fill the bathtub and sit on the edge with her feet in the water, humming to herself until the chaos in her head quieted down. Eleanor had asked her about it once. Sometimes, her mother had said, you need to feel small, protected, like the world can't get to you, and bathrooms have locks. The world couldn't get to her here, but the thoughts could. 6 years. She had given 6 years of her life to a man who never existed, a character, a performance, a carefully constructed lie designed to separate her from her money. And she had believed every word. She thought about the woman she used to be, the one who ran a charity program for underprivileged kids, the one who laughed easily and loved freely and believed in happy endings. That woman was gone. Preston had killed her piece by piece. With every criticism, every correction, every moment when he made her feel stupid and small and lucky to have him. She had let him do it. That was the part that killed her. She had let him in, handed him the tools to destroy her. And when her father tried to warn her, she had chosen Preston anyway. The baby kicked. Eleanor placed her hand on her stomach. I'm sorry, little one. Her voice echoed in the empty bathroom. I'm sorry I brought you into this mess. I'm sorry your father is a monster. I'm sorry you're going to grow up with everyone knowing what he did. The baby kicked again. Harder this time. I know. Eleanor wiped her eyes. We're going to be okay. I keep telling myself we're going to be okay, but right now, at 2:47 in the morning, I'm not sure I believe it. She leaned back against the cold porcelain. The grief hit her in waves, not for Preston. She was done grieving for Preston, but for her father, for herself, for the life she thought she was going to have. She had wanted so badly to be loved. That was the truth she had been running from for 6 years. She had wanted to be loved so desperately that she had accepted a counterfeit and convinced herself it was real. Thomas had loved her, really loved her, and when he died, a part of her had died with him. Preston had found that wound and pressed on it, made her believe she was damaged, unlovable, lucky to have anyone at all, and she had believed him. Stupid, she whispered. So stupid. But even as she said it, she could hear her father's voice in her head. You weren't stupid, sweetheart. You were hopeful. You wanted to believe the best in someone. That's not a flaw. That's a gift. The memory made her cry harder. She had been sitting with him in the hospital 3 days before he died. He had been lucid that day, clear-eyed and present in a way he hadn't been for weeks. I'm sorry, she had told him, for not listening, for not seeing what Preston really was. Hush. Her father had squeezed her hand. I don't want apologies. I want promises. What kind of promises? Promise me you'll remember who you are. Not who he made you. Not the small, frightened woman who flinches at loud noises and apologizes for breathing. The real you, the woman I raised. I don't know if she exists anymore. She does. His grip tightened. She's just been sleeping. But she'll wake up when you're ready, when it's safe. Eleanor had cried then too, held her father's hand, and wept for everything that was ending. One more promise, he had said. Anything. Don't let anyone else make you small. Not ever again. You are magnificent, Eleanor. Brilliant and fierce and stronger than you know. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. She had promised. And now, sitting in an empty bathtub at 2:47 in the morning, she was trying to figure out how to keep that promise. A knock on the bathroom door. Eleanor, her mother's voice, soft, worried. Sweetheart, are you all right? Eleanor wiped her face, took a breath. I'm okay, Mom. Can I come in? Eleanor reached over and unlocked the door. Rosemary Brennan stood in the doorway in her bathrobe. Her gray hair loose around her shoulders, her eyes filled with the same grief Eleanor felt. She took one look at her daughter sitting in the empty bathtub and climbed in next to her. They sat there together. Two Brennan women, holding hands, letting the steam wrap around them. Your father used to do this, Rosemary said after a while. When things got too heavy, he'd sit in the bathroom and just breathe. I know. Eleanor leaned against her mother's shoulder. That's where I got it. They sat in silence for a long moment. It's going to hurt for a while, Rosemary said finally. Maybe for a long time, but it won't hurt forever. Promise? Promise. The baby kicked again. Rosemary placed her hand next to Eleanor's on her belly. She's going to be something special, she said. I can feel it. How can you tell? Because she's already survived so much. Rosemary smiled, just like her mother. Eleanor closed her eyes. Tomorrow Sheeta would have to face the world. The lawyers, the questions, the pitying looks from people who thought they knew her story. But right now, in this bathroom, with her mother's hand on her belly and her father's love surrounding her like a shield, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Small and fragile and uncertain, but real. 2 weeks passed. The legal proceedings moved forward with the relentless efficiency of well-paid attorneys. Preston remained in custody, denied bail after Mitchell presented evidence of his previous disappearances. Criminal charges were being filed. Financial investigations were underway. Eleanor did her best to stay away from all of it. She spent her days in her childhood bedroom, resting as her due date approached, reading the pregnancy books her mother had bought to replace the ones Preston had thrown away, trying to reconnect with the woman she used to be. It was harder than she expected. 6 years of conditioning didn't disappear overnight. She still flinched when someone raised their voice, still apologized reflexively for things that weren't her fault, still caught herself asking permission to do things that didn't require permission, but slowly, day by day, she was getting better. Diana visited every afternoon. She brought ice cream and gossip and a fierce determination to remind Eleanor that she had never been alone. I wanted to say something, Diana admitted one afternoon. For years, I wanted to tell you that Preston was trash and you deserved better. But every time I tried, you'd get this look in your eyes, this shut-down, defensive look. And I was afraid if I pushed too hard, he'd convince you to cut me out completely. You should have pushed anyway, maybe. Diana squeezed her hand. But you're here now. That's what matters. Eleanor's mother was a constant presence. Quiet, steady, always nearby but never hovering. She cooked meals that reminded Eleanor of childhood, sang old songs while doing dishes, created a bubble of normalcy around her daughter, and waited for her to heal. One evening, 3 days before her due date, Eleanor was going through her father's things. Mitchell had brought over boxes from the estate office, personal items Harold had wanted Eleanor to have. Books from his library, the fountain pen he had used to sign every important document since his wedding day, a leather journal filled with his handwriting, and a letter. Not the letter that had been read in court, a different one, smaller, handwritten on her father's personal stationery, for Eleanor. when she's ready. Her hands trembled as she opened it. My darling girl, if you're reading this, then the worst is over. The truth has come out. The man who hurt you is facing the consequences of his actions, and you're probably sitting somewhere wondering what comes next. I wish I could be there to tell you, to hold you and promise that everything will be okay, but since I can't, I'll do my best in these few pages. First, don't blame yourself. Not for marrying him, not for staying, not for any of it. Preston Caldwell was a professional predator who had perfected his techniques over years of practice. He knew exactly how to find your wounds and press on them, exactly how to make you doubt yourself, exactly how to make his control feel like love. You are not stupid for believing him. You are not weak for staying. You are not broken because he damaged you. You are a survivor, and surviving is the hardest thing anyone can do. Second, let yourself grieve, not for Preston. He doesn't deserve your grief, but for the life you thought you were going to have, for the woman you were before he got to you, for the years you lost. That grief is real and valid, and it needs to be felt before it can be released. Third, forgive yourself. This is the hardest part. I know. I struggled with it myself when your mother and I went through our difficult years. The voice in your head that tells you it's your fault, that you should have known, that you should have been stronger, that voice is a liar. Tell it to shut up, repeatedly, until it listens. Fourth, let people love you. You have a mother who would move mountains for you, friends who have been waiting for the chance to support you, and soon a daughter who will love you with the pure, unconditional love that only children can give. Let them in. Let them help carry the weight. You don't have to do this alone. Finally, live. Not just exist. Live. Find things that make you happy and do them without apology. Laugh too loud. Take up too much space. Be unapologetically, magnificently yourself. That's what I want for you more than anything. Not revenge, not justice. Just a life well lived, on your own terms. I love you, sweetheart. I have loved you since the moment you were born. I will love you for eternity, and even though I can't be there in person, I will be with you. In the wind through the trees, in the songs your mother sings, in the face of your daughter, when she smiles for the first time. Be magnificent, Eleanor. That's the only thing I ask. All my love forever. Daddy P.S. The cardinal in the backyard is me. Just kidding. Maybe. Watch for him anyway. Eleanor read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully, placed it over her heart, and cried. Not the desperate, drowning tears of the past weeks. Different tears. Cleansing ones. The kind that wash away pain and leave space for something new. Her father had known, had understood, had loved her anyway, and he was right about all of it. She needed to grieve, to forgive herself, to let people in, and then she needed to live. The baby kicked. Hard. So hard it made Eleanor gasp. Okay. She placed both hands on her belly. I hear you. You're ready too. As if in response, she felt a strange sensation, a tightening, a pressure low in her abdomen. She looked down at her swollen belly. Not yet, she said. Give me 1 more day. I need to finish thinking. The baby kicked again. Eleanor laughed despite the tears still wet on her cheeks. Fine, be impatient. You get that from me. She called for her mother. It was time. The delivery room was bright and cold. Eleanor gripped her mother's hand with one hand and Diana's with the other. The contractions were coming faster now, crashing through her body like waves against rocks. You're doing amazing, sweetheart. Rosemary dabbed Eleanor's forehead with a cool cloth. Just keep breathing. Breathing. Right. That was the thing she was supposed to be doing. The pain was incredible. different from anything she had experienced before. Not just physical, but emotional, as if her body was processing all the grief and fear and anger of the past weeks and forcing it out along with her daughter. "One more big push," the doctor said. "She's almost here." Eleanor pushed and pushed, and then a cry, not hers, smaller, higher, the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, as if they hadn't already known. A perfect, healthy girl. The baby was placed on Eleanor's chest, warm and wet and wailing, tiny fists clenched in outrage at being brought into such a bright, cold world. Eleanor looked at her daughter, dark hair, button nose, her father's chin, number, her grandfather's chin, Harold's chin, passed down through Eleanor to this new, perfect person. "Hi, Charlotte," Eleanor's voice cracked. "I'm your mama." Charlotte stopped crying, blinked her unfocused eyes in the general direction of Eleanor's voice. "I know, it's weird out here, but you're gonna like it, I promise." Diana was crying. Rosemary was crying. Even the nurse was wiping her eyes. "She's beautiful," Rosemary whispered. "She's absolutely beautiful. She looks like Daddy." Eleanor traced her daughter's chin with one finger, just like Daddy. Charlotte made a small sound, almost like agreement. They cleaned her up, wrapped her in a pink blanket, placed a tiny cap on her dark hair. Eleanor held her daughter and felt something shift inside her. All the grief, all the pain, all the doubt and fear and self-recrimination. It didn't disappear, but it moved, made room for something else, something bigger and fiercer and more powerful than anything Preston had ever tried to take from her. Love. Real love. The kind that doesn't ask for anything in return. The kind that doesn't keep score, or build cages, or demand that you shrink yourself to fit. The kind her father had given her. The kind she would give Charlotte. "I'm going to tell you something," Eleanor whispered to her daughter. "And I want you to remember it, even though you won't understand it for years," Charlotte blinked. "You are worthy of love, exactly as you are, not because of how you look or what you achieve or who you marry, just because you exist. That's enough. That's always enough," Charlotte yawned. "I know. It sounds obvious when you put it that way." Eleanor smiled through her tears. "But sometimes people forget. Sometimes people make you forget. And when that happens, I want you to remember this moment. Your first minutes in the world, surrounded by people who love you completely." Diana squeezed Eleanor's shoulder. "Welcome to the world, Charlotte Rose Brennan." She leaned down to look at the baby. "I'm your Aunt Diana. I'm going to teach you how to spot losers from a mile away." Eleanor laughed. A real laugh. The first real laugh since before the courtroom. "Also some other stuff," Diana added, "but mostly the loser thing." Rosemary stroked Charlotte's cheek with one finger. "Your grandpa would have loved you so much, sweetheart." Her voice was thick with emotion. "He would have spoiled you rotten." "He would have." Eleanor thought of her father. His smile, his laugh, the way he always made her feel like the most important person in the room. "But we'll make sure you know him anyway, through stories, through pictures, through all the ways he's still with us." As if on cue, something moved outside the window. A cardinal, red and bright against the gray winter sky. It landed on the windowsill and tilted its head, looking directly into the room. Eleanor remembered her father's postscript. "The cardinal in the backyard is me. Just kidding. Maybe. Watch for him anyway." "Hi, Daddy," she whispered. The cardinal sang. One note, pure and clear, then it spread its wings and flew away. Eleanor held her daughter close. "That was your grandpa," she said. "He came to meet you." Charlotte slept on, oblivious to cardinals and grandpas and the whole complicated world she had just entered. And Eleanor, for the first time in years, felt at peace. 3 months later, Eleanor stood at the window of her new apartment, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Charlotte was asleep in the nursery. Finally, after a night of fussing and feeding and walking endless circles around the living room, being a mother was exhausting, more exhausting than anything Eleanor had ever experienced. But it was also wonderful in ways she couldn't have imagined. Every smile, every milestone, every moment when Charlotte's eyes focused on her face and seemed to say, "Oh, there you are, my favorite person." It made everything worth it. The apartment was small but perfect. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, and windows that looked out over a park where Eleanor took Charlotte for walks every afternoon. She had bought it with money from her trust. Her money controlled by her for the first time in 6 years. Mitchell had helped her untangle the financial mess Preston had created. The forged documents had been voided. The fraudulent transfers had been reversed. Everything Preston had tried to steal had been returned to its rightful place. Preston himself was in prison, awaiting trial on multiple counts of fraud and forgery. Mitchell said he was likely to serve at least 5 years, possibly more. Eleanor tried not to think about him. Most days, she succeeded. The divorce had been finalized quietly, without any of the drama of that first courtroom appearance. Judge Holloway had expedited the proceedings, citing the extraordinary circumstances. Eleanor had walked out of the courthouse a free woman, not Caldwell anymore. Brennan, Eleanor Brennan, mother of Charlotte Rose Brennan. It felt right. Diana had asked if she was going to take Preston's name off of everything, erase him from her life completely. "No," Eleanor had said. "I'm not going to pretend he never happened. He did. He was part of my story, but he's not the whole story, and he's definitely not the ending." She was learning to live again. Small steps at first, walking to the coffee shop on the corner, meeting Diana for lunch, taking Charlotte to Mommy and Me classes, where other mothers cooed over her dark hair and Harold's chin. Then bigger steps. Returning to her charity work, this time as a board member rather than hands-on staff. Starting to think about what came next, what she wanted to build now that she was free to build anything. Her mother visited every week. They had dinner, talked about Harold, cried when they needed to, laughed when they could. "Your father would be so proud of you," Rosemary said during one of those dinners. "The way you've rebuilt yourself, the mother you've become. He always knew you had it in you." "I'm not sure I knew." "That's okay." Rosemary squeezed her hand. "Sometimes other people see our strength before we do." Eleanor thought about that a lot. All those years of being small, of apologizing, of believing she wasn't enough, and underneath it all, a strength she hadn't known she possessed, waiting to be discovered, waiting for her to be ready. Her father had seen it, had prepared for the day when she would need it, had left her the tools to save herself. But she had done the saving. That part was hers. The sun was fully up now, golden light streaming through the windows. Charlotte would wake soon, hungry and demanding and perfect. Eleanor turned from the window and walked to the nursery. Her daughter was already stirring, making the small sounds that preceded full-scale wailing. Eleanor picked her up before the crying could start. "Good morning, my love." She kissed Charlotte's forehead. "Ready for a new day?" Charlotte gurgled in response. They walked to the kitchen together. Eleanor heated a bottle while Charlotte watched from her bouncy seat, endlessly fascinated by the world around her. "I'm going to tell you a story," Eleanor said as she settled into the rocking chair to feed her daughter. "A story about your grandpa." Charlotte latched onto the bottle, eyes fixed on Eleanor's face. "Once upon a time, there was a man named Harold. He was very smart and very kind and very, very stubborn. She smiled, remembering. Harold had a daughter. He loved her more than anything in the world, and when someone tried to hurt her, he did everything he could to protect her. Charlotte blinked. But here's the important part. Eleanor leaned closer. He didn't just try to save her. He gave her the tools to save herself, because he knew that's what she really needed. The bottle was half empty. Charlotte was slowing down, eyes getting heavy. And she did save herself. It took a while. It was harder than she thought it would be, but she did it. Charlotte's eyes drifted closed. And then she had a daughter of her own, a beautiful, perfect daughter named Charlotte Rose. And she promised herself that she would teach Charlotte to be strong, to know her own worth, to never let anyone make her feel small. Charlotte was asleep, milk-drunk and peaceful. Eleanor stood slowly, carried her daughter back to the nursery, laid her gently in the crib. Sweet dreams, little one. She stroked Charlotte's cheek. We've got a big world to conquer, but it can wait until after your nap. She stood at the crib for a long moment, watching her daughter sleep, and she thought about her father, about the letter he had left her, about the last thing he had asked of her. Be magnificent. She was trying. Every day she was trying. Some days were harder than others. Some days the old voices crept back in, telling her she wasn't enough, that she didn't deserve happiness, that Preston was right about her all along. But those days were getting fewer, and the good days were getting better. She walked to the living room window, looked out at the park where she would take Charlotte walking later. A cardinal sat on a branch of the oak tree closest to her building, red and bright in the morning sun. It turned its head, seemed to look directly at her. Eleanor smiled. I'm trying, Daddy. She pressed her hand against the glass. I'm trying to be magnificent. The cardinal sang, one note, pure and clear and beautiful. Then it spread its wings and flew away, leaving Eleanor standing in the golden morning light. Behind her, Charlotte slept peacefully. Outside, the world waited. And Eleanor Brennan, survivor and mother and magnificent woman, was finally ready to meet it. The courtroom was different this time. Same marble hallways, same wooden benches, same portrait of blind justice hanging above the judge's bench, but everything else had changed. Eleanor sat in the gallery, Charlotte on her lap. Her daughter was 1 year old now, all dark curls and Harold's chin and an infectious giggle that made strangers smile. The hearing was a formality. Preston was being sentenced. The trial had concluded months ago, with convictions on 12 counts of fraud, forgery, and financial crimes. The evidence Harold had compiled had been devastating. Eleanor hadn't attended the trial. She had given her testimony via video deposition, refusing to be in the same room as Preston again. Her lawyers had handled the rest. But she wanted to be here today, wanted to see this chapter close. Preston was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit. He looked smaller than she remembered, diminished. The charm that had fooled so many people was gone, replaced by the tired resignation of a man who had run out of tricks. He didn't look at her. Judge Holloway presided again. She read the sentencing in a clear, measured voice. 8 years in federal prison, 5 years probation afterward, full restitution to all his victims, though everyone knew he would never be able to pay it. Preston said nothing, just nodded and let the deputies lead him away. Eleanor watched him go. She felt nothing, not satisfaction, not revenge, not even relief, just a quiet certainty that this part of her life was over. Charlotte grabbed Eleanor's nose and giggled. Okay. Eleanor kissed her daughter's hand. We can go. She stood up, gathered her things. Diana was waiting outside the courtroom. How do you feel? Eleanor thought about it. Free, she said finally. I feel free. They walked out of the courthouse together, into the sunshine, into the rest of their lives. Charlotte babbled happily, pointing at birds and trees and all the wonders of the world she was just beginning to discover, and Eleanor held her daughter close and smiled, because she had survived, because she was magnificent, because this was just the beginning. If this story touched your heart, if you know someone who needs to hear this message, or if you've ever felt trapped by someone else's version of who you should be, do me a small favor. Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and share this story with someone who might need it today. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to people who are searching for hope, for validation, and for proof that they are not alone. Stay until the end. Eleanor's story has twists you won't see coming. And her final words to Preston in that courtroom will stay with you long after this video ends. Now, let's begin. Closing statement. Thank you for staying with us through Eleanor's entire journey. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to bring meaningful stories and valuable life lessons to our audience. Every word was crafted with intention. Every emotion was designed to resonate with real experiences. We believe stories have the power to heal, to inspire, and to remind us of our own strength. If this story meant something to you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that matter. Until next time, remember, you are worthy of real love, you are stronger than you know, and your story is not over yet.